This is the Jerry Doyle Show.
The poll question results at the website are tight. With Mitt looking like the Mitt Romney, should Ron Paul take one for the team and back the GOP nominee or run as a third-party independent? 48% say take one for the team, the GOP team. 52% say run Indy and take one for the country. Well, someone who might be able to answer that for us definitively is Dr. Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul, a guy who's actually both a doctor and a congressman, as opposed to the non-governor, non-senator, non-speaker that he's opposing in the GOP contest. He's joining us on the program. Congressman Paul, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Good to be with you.
Reason Magazine, I know you're familiar with them, they said if you ran as an independent, you'd get about 17% of the vote. You'd probably also get the blame for having Obama get reelected. So what's a Ron Paul guy to do?
Well, I haven't been thinking a whole lot about that. We're still gathering up some delegates. We want to see how well we do in all these primaries that are processing the delegates right now. So I haven't given any serious thought about going into third party.
Romney's got 655 delegates, Santorum 278, Gingrich 135, you 51. You're going to be making a play for Texas and California. How is that going to help your ground game to bring some kind of gravitas, I hate to use the word, but I just did, to what we're going to see take place in Tampa? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish along the way?
Well, we want to get the delegates to make sure that the freedom philosophy has some representation. And in Texas and California, you can win it by district. So therefore, you don't have to win the entire state to win all the delegates as it was in Florida. So it gives us a little more opportunity to campaign in those two states.
All right, one of the big things you're about is auditing the Fed before we do away with the Fed. Mitt Romney, he becomes the nominee, he becomes the president. Anything going to change at the Federal Reserve with Mitt Romney?
No, he's been pretty close to Goldman Sachs, so I doubt very much. I think financially his views are very much the same. And, of course, I put them all in about the same category, whether it's the foreign policy or the monetary policy or actually even the fiscal policy of spending. I don't think anybody's proposing to cut $1 trillion out of the budget like I would like to do. So they must not think it's a serious problem. I happen to think the spending and the deficit is much more serious than they'll recognize.
And of any other proposal put forward, yours is the only one that actually cuts the size and scope of government, that actually does anything to do anything about serious deficit reduction and spending reductions. The other three increase it, as does Paul Ryan's Path to Prosperity. He's being talked about as being the VP under Mitt Romney. So if you look at Santorum, who's going to be focusing on social issues, not on the economy. If you look at Gingrich, who's going to be focusing on Gingrich and not on the party or the country, and you look at Romney, who's beholden to the special financial interest, we're not going to see much of a change other than what we're seeing play out today, which hasn't benefited the country. Rick Santorum says you got to take one for the team, which he did with the $1 trillion prescription drug benefit under Medicare, which was to buy the electoral votes of Florida. What's the point, Congressman? I know you haven't taken the time to think about it, and I'm not asking you for an answer today. I'm not going to pull a Sean Hannity on you so you can make breaking news. But what about taking one for the country?
You're talking about history, but it's also, or you're talking about what might happen, but that's also history. And I haven't been in business of, coming up short, thinking that I get a grain and hoping I can really change something. So I usually state my positions, which I've done for 30-something years, and was able to get elected under those beliefs. So I'm not likely to change that in any way. I think that somebody has to stand up for what is necessary. And quite frankly, I think that people are coming our way. I mean, the large majority think the Fed ought to be looked into. Now we're up to over 70% of the American people think we ought to come home from Afghanistan. Now that's a shift. So in many ways, we're winning the intellectual battle. We have to prove it by doing better in the delegate process. But the whole discussion is changing. I think this is very healthy. But right now, there are still more people who are living off the government than paying into the government, and that makes it difficult to come up with a program where you actually want to cut the scope and size of government and limit the amount of this wealth transfer that goes on.
A lot of people had written you off even before you got in the game, attempted to eliminate you while you were in the game, and that's Fox News, and that's MSNBC and CNN and CNBC and just about everybody else out there who didn't like the fact that you were getting traction. What happens to the Romulans November 7th, 2012? What happens to the Ron Paul movement November 7th, 2012? If you're not the nominee and you don't win the election, where do those people go? Who do they turn to? Did they turn to the Republican Party? Do they go with the status quo and then supposedly get excited about someone they're not excited about and then play this over again where we go Bob Dole, then we go John McAmnesty, then we go Mitt Romney, and then we go what, Rick Santorum in 2016 because it's his term?
Well, they're going to have to look elsewhere, but there are a few in Congress. But the grassroots in the country, when I go to the campuses, I get pretty excited about the endorsements that we're getting and the enthusiasm we get. And, you know, last night we had a turnout in Chico of over 6,000. And this morning I looked to see what the news said. And the news says, where's Ron Paul? Why doesn't he do anything? And he's so awful silent these days. So, you know, that's where the disconnect is. But if the people are there, especially the young people, and they're determined, they're reading about the Fed, they want a different foreign policy, they think personal liberty is important, they're not going to be able to stop this by, you know, thwarting us in an election. I mean, I think the momentum is so great it won't be stopped, and there will be others. The movement does not depend on me. It depends on a lot of people over the lot of years. Good talk show hosts happen to contribute a whole lot. So I think this is going to continue, and it's not so much that they're automatically convinced and converted as much as of a necessity. Because of the pragmatism now, which is okay, it doesn't make any good sense to keep fighting these wars and expanding the wars in the Middle East because we don't have the money and we're not winning the wars. Same way with the financial situation. Most people outside of Washington believe that this debt crisis. In Washington, you know, Republican and Democrat leadership still believe that deficits don't matter all that much, but we have to pander a little bit to some of those radical conservatives who think that we ought to cut back and balance the budget. So they do that. But the people are waking up, and that's why I think the young people are very much aware of what they're getting, and I don't think they like what they see.
And it's an education process, and again, a movement, as you say, so much more so than one individual. You know, you get a huge crowd, 6,000 in a town like Chico, huge, but, you know, you got Rick Santorum sitting at a cheese shop with the Duger family, and everybody's there covering that. Like, the visuals, the image, perception becomes reality. How does your reality become the perception? How does that message go mainstream, go viral more so than it is the people that are actually involved with your campaign, but others out there who don't get an opportunity to be exposed to it because it's pretty much been decided it's Mitt versus Barack?
Tedious job, but the strength of the views make a difference. It used to be by word of mouth. But today, at least we have the internet. We do have the talk shows and the radio. So we are reaching a lot more people. But you're right. If you're not on the evening news, and if you are, they say, well, what's he doing out there? Why he can't win, you know? If they recite that 1,000 times, they might say, well, I like Ron Paul, but I can't vote for him because the media told me that he can't win. So you have to eventually break into that, but it's slow and it's tedious, but the strength of the ideas have to prevail, and they will, because we're working with a failed system. So just as socialism failed, interventionism and welfareism and inflationism, it's a failed system, and that's what we're witnessing right now, the failure of that entire system, and something has to replace it.
Congressman Ron Paul is with us on the program. RonPaul2012.com is the website. I know you got to get scooting here, Congressman, because you got a busy media day today. When you look at how we're perpetuating the status quo, and the results have not benefited the country, what is it that's going out there now? Is there a bat signal in the sky where everyone's getting the message? Is there an email going around that says time to bail on everyone and get on board the Mitt Romney train? Or is it just this unspoken word where, you know, the fat lady has sung and, well, I guess for the betterment of the party and the country and to beat the socialist president, it's time to get on board the Mitt Romney train. Is that just an organic process that takes place, or are there actually some people that are just saying, hey, what are you doing? Get on board. It's time. Let's do it now.
Well, I don't think the emails go out, but I think those who are in charge behind the scenes, those who want the foreign policy we have, the people who have all the money in the military-industrial complex, the people who care about the financial system and the bailouts, they're very, very important, and they're very much involved with the major media. I mean, it's an unspoken word. They get involved in both parties, so I don't think it matters a whole lot to them which party wins. And if you look at the last 40, 50 years, it hasn't changed all that much. I mean, we've elected Republicans, had them in the House and the Senate and the presidency, and all the policies continue to go the same way. So, but the reason why things are different now is the apparent failure of it in these last 4 years. That's why they're up against it. But they cover themselves by being very much involved in both parties.
And I'll end with this, Congressman, but in one of the debates, you were asked by Wolf Blitzer, it's 3 a.m. and you get a call from Raul Castro. What are you going to say to him? And your answer was, I'm going to ask him what he was calling about. And a lot of people were so taken aback by that. But I thought it was refreshing, like, hey, Raul, what do you need? As opposed to saying, Raul Castro's calling? Get to the choppers, get to the bombers, scramble our forces, let's launch our missiles. Maybe we should just talk to him.
Sometimes you think of things afterwards, and I got to thinking, well, I might have asked him if they wanted to play a baseball game. Remember how they played table tennis with the Chinese and things got a little bit better after we did that?
Right.
I would think that, but, that would be risky because the Americans would get scared to death. What if the Cubans beat us, in baseball? That wouldn't be so good.
You got a great attitude, and you got a great following out there, and a great opportunity, in my opinion, Congressman Paul, to continue this Ron Paul momentum, this movement to kind of invigorate, educate, inform, and hopefully formulate some type of a different path for us going forward, because what we've been doing in the past isn't working in the present, and we need to do something much different to ensure a much better future. Congressman Ron Paul, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show.